Whoa, is that Super Mario World in 3D? Yeah, it is. How did you do that? Well, I mean, you know, uh... Hi, you probably have no idea who I am. I just put a game on Steam a couple months ago, so this is the natural progression, I believe. All career self-esteem issues and denial aside, let me show you how I did this, but not why I did this. If you ask me why, So my first goal was to figure out how I wanted this to look and feel. Super Mario World used 90s style, classic pixel art, but when everything changed to 3D polygons and 3D worlds in the late 90s, nothing really kept that aesthetic.
Bruh.
That's where I stumbled across voxels. They're pixel art, but they're 3D. Instead of using tiny little squares to make up a model or environment, they use tiny little cubes. Either way, I think they're a perfect callback to old video game art, and a great fit for this nightmare abomination that I'm about to make. I am not an artist. I had no idea how to properly create voxel art, so I had to do some research, and I thought I found a method that would work pretty well for this. Essentially, this method involves taking the 2D side sprite of the object you're trying to create, stacking a bunch of them together, then using its front 2D sprite to sort of cut out a mold into what would start as your voxel. Then once you have your mold, you can polish it up and yeah, so that didn't work. But my goal for this project was absolute quality, or at least the best quality that I could make, so I didn't really want to cut corners. I decided to just make these things by scratch, cube by cube, literally every single cube. And since I was making the entirety of level 1, it took a while. Mario himself by far took the longest. He was the first one that I started building, and I was making him while I was still learning how to use the software Magica Voxel. He also has the most unique frames of every voxel that I made, including enemies and items. But to be honest, at first I wasn't sure how I was going to animate any of these. Was I going to just make it frame animation like sprites, or was I going to do some kind of rig thing? I attempted to put Mario into Mixamo, which is Adobe's rig animator where you take actual 3D models and make animations, but this is what happened. Not sure if I needed a dagger stab animation for Mario, but if I do, this is the place to get it from. So yeah, I just ended up torturing myself through all of these voxels for Mario, and it was animated like you'd animate a 2D sprite. But more on the pain of voxel creation a little bit later. So I had Mario mostly done outside of a few different frames. What was next? Well, we gotta make him do Mario things. Specifically in Super Mario World, he can jump, duck, slide, shoot fireballs after collecting a fire flower, get bigger, get smaller, he can accelerate, he can sprint jump or whatever this weird diagonal leg thing is. He can spin jump and break blocks, and actually you can do a ton of other things as well, but I'm just focusing on level 1, so we're gonna start with that. So now you know what time it is. It's time to start. Yeah, actually, joke's on me, I'm aggressively average at programming. I don't know a lot about 3D character controllers, but one of the best ones I could find was this example from Brackeys. This was definitely the smoothest example I could find, so I implemented it. Thank you for all your tutorials and rip to your channel, bro. And yeah, this is what the Mario voxel looks like in Unity. Things are going pretty smoothly at this point, and he was moving around the way I wanted him to. Oh, and I just wanted to take a second to thank the developers of this Unity add-on voxel importer. My entire project here does not exist without this add-on, so thank you so much. So right after I got Mario's movement working, I animated him using Unity's in-engine frame animator and the animator state machine. Then you just reference the animator in the code and set all the parameters in the right spots, and you've got a model that'll walk around and jump and stuff. I also did a good amount of tweaking to make it feel right. Of course, I made it so Mario can accelerate and decelerate and jump accordingly. And then a little later, I started working on the spin jump, and he was able to fly for a bit, and then I did it the correct way. One thing that did take me a little bit to figure out was how to make Mario slide off of slopes correctly, as you can see. But with a little more research, I was able to figure that out as well. Next, I wanted to start actually building some of the level, like get sort of a base for Mario to live in. How did I do that? Well, I just got insanely skilled with Pro Builder. Professional level designer stuff. Like insanely just proficient with Pro Builder. And like... Yeah, I'd never used Pro Builder before, so once again, hit some YouTube and figured it out. You're probably starting to see some kind of a pattern. So all in all, the level design was a combination of Pro Builder and more voxels. For everything that wasn't a voxel, I used textures from Super Mario World and made materials out of them. Except for the grass itself. Since we're switching this to 3D, there's not much to pull from the original Super Mario World other than just a green color. So naturally I thought the best fit would be the grass texture from Super Mario 64. I felt like thematically it made sense to take the grass from that 3D world and put it into this one. At this point I felt like it was time to populate the level with all of the iconic enemies and items, and then also program all of the logic and behavior. And fun fact, this is where I realized this was going to be just an ungodly amount of work. Anyways, I decided to start with the art itself. Most of these voxels wouldn't be that bad to make.
I'm about to end this man's whole career.
Yeah, anyways, they won't be that hard to make. Alright, so after I fumbled with a bunch of the art, I decided to program all of the basic enemy behavior, which in Super Mario World is pretty easy. Things just patrol back and forth and they don't really even notice you, at least in the first level. I used a nav mesh, which can create a specific area for enemies like Rex and Bullet Bill to move around in. And sometimes I forgot to set the physics correctly, which is awesome, but I'm not making Mario Galaxy, so unfortunately I had to cut that. Enemies like Rex and Bullet Bill also need to sense when Mario jumps on them, and with Rex he actually gets stomped down to a smaller state, so I did that too. I started working on the blocks after that. The question block was pretty easy. All I had to do was animate it when Mario jumped into it, and then instantiate a fire flower or a mushroom depending on what state of health Mario is in. These spinning blocks, on the other hand, were a little trickier. They've got dual functionality, so if Mario hits it from the bottom, they become flat and start slowly spinning and essentially become completely invulnerable for a time. If Mario hits them with a spin jump from the top, they'll blow up with little particles. And this is where I learned more about Unity's particle effect system like the cool kids on YouTube. Okay, and of course it can't be Mario without power-ups and power-downs. The best way to do that in this context is a state machine, which will be able to track when Mario gets a power-up or when he takes damage, changing his state. And apparently, there's a pretty easy way to do this in Unity already. It's state machine behavior, which I actually just figured out existed like 3 days ago. So to make the Mario state machine, instead of using that, I ended up So I made a custom state machine for this. It was painful. Honestly, it's pretty bad. I'm pretty sure it's not scalable for anything, and it's just... For a tiny project like this, it definitely does what it needs to do, and it works pretty well, to be honest, but with the state machine on a player character, you have to really consider all the circumstances and things the player will run into, so I'll definitely approach that differently next time. The most complicated part of the state machine was the firepower state. Whenever this was entered, I had to switch Mario's model and animations to a completely different set to match the colors. And of course, we had to be able to shoot fireballs in this state. So to do that, whenever the button is pressed, I just instantiated an object in front of Mario and added some forward force to it. And trust me, as much as I wanted to keep this OP lava burst attack, I did switch it to the correct power level afterwards. Whenever these objects touch an enemy, they do the according damage. In this level, it's always just a one-shot though. Finally, I made a little fireball voxel to match Mario's aesthetic, and then added that model to the object, and that's a fireball. Next, I decided to make the Skybox because I was tired of looking at the gray Unity void. I found the correct background on some website, and then I put it directly into Photoshop. Yeah, honestly, this process was a bit of a dumpster fire as well. To make a correctly sized Skybox, I had to connect two copies of the background together and then try to draw them and Photoshop the edges together so that it looked seamless. It was just, yeah. I got it to look pretty okay at the end, and for being such a minor part of the project, it does bring a ton of life to the level instantly. By now, most of the core concepts are proven. Mario can move around, he can change state, there are enemies that can patrol around, there's items he can interact with, there's a level he can explore. Aside from a couple of core features, I just had to finish building the level and populate it with enemies and items using the logic and voxels I already created. Those couple core features being the one red shell in the level that Mario can pick up and throw, and UI, which is actually a pretty big task. I should probably mention sound as well, although I'm not actually making any sounds, I'm just taking sounds from the original game and plugging them in as I go. So sound is just kind of a part of the natural process of everything else that's getting built. Other than that, I'm pretty sure there's not anything else to... We'll do that at the end. The way the Koopa Shell worked out in the end was not at all how I initially thought it would be programmed, so it took a little bit more time than I thought. I'm not going to go through all the code, but basically how it works is I had to give Mario an empty placeholder object attached to him, and that's where the shell actually gets put into when he picks it up. I made it so you can hold the button down and you can charge up the throw, so you can throw it lightly or hard. I thought that would be kind of fun. And the shell uses physics, so it'll kind of slide around after you shoot it at something. And then I just made it kill things like fireballs do, and that's basically it. I didn't get a ton of footage for this. So this is where the bulk of the level building went. And it's kind of where the project started feeling legit, I guess. Seemingly the art and mechanics were kind of falling into place, and I was just putting stuff down in the level to make sure that it looked somewhat similar to the actual game. I thought that I would show a lot more than this because this is where the biggest visible changes come from, but I guess there's just a lot less to explain for this part because I'm not actually designing it. Whereas for all of the other parts, I had to sort of rethink how everything would be made in Unity. And all I had to do after that was just kind of copy the structure of the original. And I did forget about tubes. You can't have Mario without green tubes. It's a little bit jank, but it goes into that underground section. The underground section, we're not gonna talk very much about it. It's pretty bare bones, and it's not a lot going on, and it's just more. So the last main piece is UI, and I bundled a dumb amount of work into this category, including the entire score system, the small, if you can call it, inventory system that Mario has, and all the coins and all the collectibles other than the power-ups. So the inventory box is literally just a hollow blue square that I made in Photoshop. And then it gets imported as a sprite into Unity, and then you can use it wherever you want. Whenever Mario's holding an item, you can see it in the inventory at the top of the screen. So I just made some PNGs to represent the 2 items that you can actually get in this level, and then I just laid the PNGs on top of that inventory. All of these UI components will go onto what is called a canvas object in Unity, which is basically just a tool you can use to layer UI images and numbers and names or anything that you want sort of displayed on screen at all times. Mostly the inventory wasn't too bad to code, but there is this one feature where if Mario's holding an item in there, you can actually eject that item and it'll come out into the game and you can use it. So I had to basically take a UI item, get rid of it, and then create an in-game item to just kind of like fall from the top and hit the ground. There were problems with this one. I have less hair now, but I got it to work and it actually looks really cool. It doesn't fall straight down like in Super Mario World, but I think in this context, the little pop-out just works perfectly. Then after that came the score, the level timer, the end level scripted event, if you want to call it that, and the coins. I modeled all the coins and I basically placed and put them in as I was making the score system, so that's kind of grouped together. I don't think I'm gonna go deeply into all the other UI components. It's just a timer and a really simple Unity score system where you collect coins and your score goes up, and then there's a bit of a multiplier at the end of the level for the final score. But this video is getting kind of long and that stuff's not super interesting, so. Okay, yeah, I did make Charge and Chuck. That's a story for another day. Well, I guess it's time to see how this all came together. Well, I guess I don't really have much more to say other than thanks for watching. I cannot release this for anyone to play. If I did, I guess I'd have to fix all the bugs. I think I really would like to do another one of these, but for right now, we'll see if anyone even likes this. Also, what game or level would I do? What's the natural next step?